Hey, David McGuffin here. Welcome to Travel Talk Tuesday for November the 14th, 2023. Thank you guys for joining either tonight live or later on this week watching the recorded session of it. I appreciate everyone's loyalty and faithfulness of checking out a Travel Talk Tuesday. It's become a great resource for those who want to know a little bit about exploring Europe and want to know about the destinations that we visit each week and talk about each week in Europe. So thanks once again for that. This is our last episode for the month. We won't be back for a few weeks until the 19th of December when we'll have our grand online and live here at home session in Middleburg, Florida at our house. So check out davidmcguffin.com/TTT to get all the information about that live event on December the 19th here at my home or live online as well. So tonight's topic deals with the northern portion of the island of Ireland. As you know, Ireland is divided now since 1922 into 6 counties in the north called Northern Ireland and 26 counties in the south known as first the Irish Free State from 1922 to 1949, and then in 1949 it became the Republic of Ireland. So there's a division there and a little diversity there, and so we're going to visit the town of Derry, or Londonderry, depending on if you are pro-Catholic or pro-Protestant, or pro-English or pro-Irish, and talk about that town for the first segment of this tour. And then the second segment of the tour, we're going to visit the county in the Irish Republic that's northwest of Derry, which is known as Donegal. Just a small little segment there. And then we'll finish it up with a maybe a 3 or 4 minute session on the Antrim coast in Northern Ireland, where the best attractions are, like the Giant's Causeway, the Carrigree Rope Bridge, and those sort of things. So without further ado, let me share my screen again and get to the topic at hand tonight, which is right now Derry, or Londonderry. You can see the 3 areas that we're visiting. Londonderry is right there. Keep an eye on the yellow national border because well, it's already disappeared now, I guess, because this is Londonderry, located on the River Foyle, and it is one of the dividing points that are part of Derry is in the Republic of Ireland, and part of it is in the Northern Ireland section that belongs to the United Kingdom. This is the walled city of Derry, and you can see on the River Foyle here, which kind of circles around there, that through the centuries, this is a prominent outpost and a envied position for anyone to take because of the high ground and the location on the river and the views to the harbor. Now, back 1 second. Okay, so with this, you can see that here are the city walls dating back to the Middle Ages. Let's talk about maybe, even beyond the Middle Ages to around the 16th and 17th century. So the walls are here surrounding the city, as you can see, and those walls are still intact. They are probably about 60 feet wide. So they're heavy and they're thick, so cannonballs back in the day could not penetrate them. And the old walled city is within here. You can see several prominent churches, one here, which is St. Columba Church, and another church here that were within the walls. And this city, pretty much the dividing line between the Republic of Ireland, which is about right here, and Northern Ireland, which is here, is sorry, I got that mixed up. The Northern Ireland boundary is about right here along the walls, and the Republic of Ireland is on this side of the old city. Consequently, the Irish Catholic community lives in this area called the Bogside, and the Unionists, the Protestant English supporting the crown, the king of England right now, lives in this area. And the two neighborhoods have, through the centuries, competed with one another. So I'm going to let this run and show a little bit of the walking tour that we took back a few months ago. And I'll do a little commentary on that, plus give you a little history of Derry as we go along. We do a walking tour called Martin McCrossan's Walking Tour. Been doing this for years and years and years. This is an old sign. It used to be 4 pounds a person. Now it's 6 pounds a person, so a little bit more expensive, but you still get the same experience. It's a walk around the city walls with a local guide. This is my group and some other people back a few months ago as we started our trek on a beautiful day in Derry. The skies were wonderful, and we get a guide like this. It's a different guide every time, but they work for the now deceased Martin McCrossan, who has formulated this tour years and years ago. Now, Derry is famous because the walls were fortified. I'm reading a little bit of my own writing here. Derry was fortified in the early 1600s, and then they came across a conflict with the Catholic King James II and the Protestant King William of Orange, by the way. And so what happened was that the Catholic forces were into the harbor and laid siege to Derry, the town of Derry. And what happened there was James's forces came up the river, and 13 apprentice boys were out partying on the walls one night. So these are little kids that were learning to do jobs and trades in the city of Derry, saw these ships coming into the harbor. They threw down their beer or whatever they were partying with and ran down to the main gate and shut the gate and thwarted the Catholic King James's forces from sieging the city. Fast forward about 3 or 4 months until April of that year, James's forces recouped and came back and sieged the city and laid under siege for 105 days, even resorting to making sure that there was no food into the city, bombarding the city with cannonballs and everything else. And the only way that King James's forces were thwarted and sent away after 105 days was that there was a barrier in the River Foyle that was broken by supply ships or resupply ships from the English forces. And the King James forces hightailed it and ran away. And that was the last of the Jacobite revolt that happened there. And from that point on, that part of Ireland, or as we now know as Northern Ireland, has been held by Protestants for the most part. Now, there's also, that was centuries ago in the 1688 and 89. Fast forward to the 20th century, all of that kind of came to a head, and we come to the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, when there were these troubles that happened all throughout Northern Ireland. But Derry was one of the main points where all of it happened. And it culminated into a head in January 30th, 1972, and an event that now has infamously became known as Bloody Sunday. It was at that time there was a rally in that Bogside neighborhood, which I showed you down the way. That was the Catholic neighborhood. That rally of folks down there, and there was 1,000 or more people that were there. Up on the city walls, there were English or United Kingdom and British troops and a regiment of paratroopers that were up there guarding on the walls, guarding the police station and jail and all of that. Well, the paratroopers said they heard fire coming their way, gunfire coming their way, and they opened up fire on the people down below, the Catholic protesters down below. And I'm looking in to see there were 13 unarmed, unfortunately, civilians, some of them children, mortally killed, and a couple of them wounded as well. Hence the name Bloody Sunday. Now, up until just a few years ago, the English had never investigated into that, but there was called a Saville investigation that happened later on, even in this century, the 21st century. And finally, let me look at the dates here. Finally, in 2010, this investigation that happened in the Parliament of the United Kingdom came up with the conclusion that indeed there was no gunfire projected at the troops up on the wall of Derry, that the paratroopers fired in error and made that killing in error, and the blame was placed on the British forces, not the Catholic protesters that were down. So Bloody Sunday in 72, and then there was, in between all of that, there was in 1998 something called the Good Friday Agreement that put peace between those Catholic and Protestant protesters all over the Northern Ireland area. This mural, and there's a lot of murals in the Bogside area of Derry. This mural depicts one of the protesters who were jailed by the English, and they were jailed and treated as a prisoner, not a political prisoner. And some of these folks, many of them, Bobby Sands, one of the names that pops to mind all the time, went on a hunger strike and died in the prison there. And so these are commemorated here on murals in Belfast and also here in Derry. Boy, that was a whole lot of talking on my part, and a lot of it off the top of my head, because I enjoy getting all this historical perspective put together. But you're looking down into that Bogside neighborhood right here. And let me do another spin. We're taking this spin now by way of Google Earth Pro, and looking at the walls of Derry. This is the sectarian Protestant neighborhood right here. This is the Bogside, the Irish, the poor neighborhood there, the River Foyle here. And in the 21st century, this curvy bridge that you see has been built. It's a pedestrian bridge called the Peace Bridge that links the Northern Ireland with the Irish Republic, and has served as a symbol of joint unity and hoping lasting peace from now until ever. It's a beautiful city to visit. On our Best of Ireland tour, we spend an afternoon here coming up from the Republic of Ireland, and we end up in Northern Ireland. And so that's what we do on that. But Derry is a beautiful city. Now we're going to talk about the Donegal Peninsula, which is up there above Derry. Some years back, I went to the Inishowen Peninsula, which is the northwesternmost point of the island. As Inishowen is, Inish is the word for sort of an island. And it's a beautiful thing going out to Loch Swilly and then finally out to the North Sea. I'm not sure why that's so important that it's sitting there for so long, but that's how it came out. Up there, there's an Italian restaurant in almost every large Italian town. And so I was looking for some meatballs, and I got some, or polpetti. And then we went to this pub called O'Flaherty's Pub. I had met a friend down in Kilkenny named Richie, who sent me to this pub that was owned by his uncle. I came in and had a great time, enjoyed meeting his uncle. They gave me a shirt from his pub called O'Flaherty's Pub in Buncrana. And then we had a great time. I left there and I drove on up further to Malin Head. There's a lot of ancient Celtic monuments there. That one there usually is saw dated back to the 5th century BC. And this is Malin Head, the farthest northwestern point on the island of Ireland. It's interesting that down there in that meadow down there are white stones that outline the word E-I-R-E, which means Ireland in the Irish dialect. And that was put there because they wanted to make sure that the forces in World War II, the German bombers that were coming over, knew that Ireland was a neutral country. Now, Northern Ireland was not, but Ireland was. So this is some scenes from Malin Head up there on the Inishowen Peninsula. I spent a couple of nights up there, had never been there before, but it's wild, rough, and rugged. Plenty of sheep. It's a sheep county, one of those 7 counties where sheep dominate more than people. And this is just a little hiking trail that I took out to Malin Head, which is at the very end. I guess those are cows laying in the meadow right there as well. Having never been there, it was kind of an exploratory trip, and I was driving a car by myself, and I just went from one little village to the next, looking up on Google or whatever on maps, trying to find what's the biggest place around. This Seaview Tavern was something well rated online, and so I made a 30-minute drive one evening to go over there and have a authentic seafood dinner. I think I'll show you some crab claws here in a minute that I had that I very much enjoyed. I can't say that I couldn't have gotten it anywhere else, but I was trying out some highly rated places on the Malin Peninsula. I can tell you what, it was even in the middle of the summer in July and there weren't many people there. So it's definitely an off the beaten track place to visit if you're going to Ireland. Unfortunately, my tours don't go all the way up there. We do skirt Donegal and, of course, go to Derry as well. There are my crab claws. Boy, I can taste them right now. They're good. Heading back, I went to Buncrana again, which is halfway up the Malin Peninsula from Donegal. And there, I kept seeing the signs about Amazing Grace Country. And I saw it coming up and drove right through it and missed it. And then going back down, I kind of looked it up online and found that it was the place where the song Amazing Grace was sort of conceived. Before doing that, I went to this little Irish village that kind of encapsulated what life would have been back in the famine times of 1845 to 49, and it was well done. John Newton, 1725 to 1807, was a trader and not a very nice man. I think I'll tell you about it a little bit right here in this bit of video. Hey, David McGuffin here. I am still in County Donegal, way up here in the northwest coast of Ireland, in a little village known as Buncrana. And this body of water here behind me is part of the Atlantic Ocean, the North Atlantic Ocean. It's called Lough Swilly, and it plays a pretty important role in the life of a gentleman named John Newton. John Newton was a slave trader, and it is written that he was a foul-mouthed slave trader, and he was taking a journey from the United States through Canada, back across the North Atlantic, here back to Ireland and England. Well, it just so happens in 1748, in April of 1748, a huge storm came up on the North Atlantic Sea. Just kind of rocked that boat all night long. The wind was so bad, howling wind, pouring rain, that it knocked the sail and the mast off. It just blew its slap away. Many people fell off the boat and died overnight. The next morning, the remaining sailors and John Newton awoke to sunshine and no winds, and their boat drifting in the North Atlantic. Now, it's kind of crazy because they were a long way away. They knew where they were, but there was no direction, no way to row a big boat like that, no sail, no mast, no nothing. So for 4 weeks, John Newton and those sailors just kind of drifted in the North Atlantic. During that 4 weeks,
John Newton, the foul-mouthed sailor and slave trader, began to found a Christian tract there on the boat and a copy of the New Testament. And because he had nothing more to do and he thought he was just lost for the rest of his life and going to die, he read the New Testament and read that Christian tract, which explained to him in very clear words that he definitely was a wretch, and there was nothing but grace that prevented him to live. And so he began to have hope as he read the New Testament more and more as he drifted listlessly in the sea. They had some salted cod that they lived on. 12 men would eat half a salted cod a day, and for 4 weeks they starved, but they survived. After 4 weeks of drifting in the sea, John Newton found himself right here in Loch Swilly. Looked up in the morning and saw this land and said, "Praise God, I found land, I've been saved." Some years later, John Newton, after he went over and began preaching, he became a Christian and devoted his life to Christ and telling others about the salvation Jesus Christ can provide for everyone. In 1774, on New Year's Day, 1774, John Newton penned these words. This words to this song called "Amazing Grace." It goes a little bit something like this. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Well, that's the story John Newton wrote back in New Year's Day, 1774. Right here on Loch Swilly is where it all began, when his shipwrecked boat washed ashore. Hey, your adventure starts right here with David McGuffin's Exploring Europe. We'll catch you next time from somewhere else on this island of Ireland.
I headed on south back toward Londonderry and came across this ancient 6th century ring fort that was sitting high on the top of a hillside, and I just found it fascinating to walk up to it and find it perfectly intact how it was in the 6th century. Now, it was kind of restored and some stones put back in place way back in the 1870s, but it's been sitting like that since. Now, the ancient Celts arrived there on that island, we think around the 5th century BC, and they began building earthen forts, and then over the next 1,000 years, these earthen forts developed into these stone fortifications with housings inside. Each one of these forts would have we would call it nowadays called a petty king that was in charge of the community, and folks would go out and they would have pastors outside and everything else. But there was a lot of these all over the place in the hills of Ireland. This one is called the Grena of Aluyak, or something like that in English. Look at the vistas here. That is beautiful weather. No one ever thinks of weather like that in Ireland, but about 85% of the time we have clear blue skies on our tours in Ireland. I think the ones that I led, we encountered only one day of rain, probably out of a cumulative amount of time of, I would say maybe 80 days of tours in Ireland. So don't get your mindset that it's dark and gray in Ireland. For the most time, it is beautiful blue cumulonimbus clouds and everything here in Ireland. And of course, there's 40 shades of green everywhere. From Londonderry, we from there on Buncrana area, we go right over here to the North Antrim coast.
Hi, David McGuffin here on the far north coast of Ireland. at the Giant's Causeway. I hope you enjoy this 60-second look around this magnificent example of God's handiwork.
Geologists say that some 60 million years ago, when the Earth was forming and the tectonic plates were breaking apart, that a lava eruption happened in this area, and over a course of many thousands of years, these ball-site columns formed as the Earth's core, which had been pushed here, were drying. Those are very unusual, and they stretch under the North Sea and come up on an island of Scapa, which is part of Scotland, near where we go. We actually go to Scapa, but also near Oldham in Scotland. From the Giant's Causeway on the far north coast of Ireland, your adventure starts right here with David McGuffin's Exploring Europe.
David McGuffin here, kind of jogging along the Ulster Way. Behind me is the northern tip of the island here, of Ireland. And there's a little rope bridge that goes out to the very tip where salmon fishers used to string their nets to catch the salmon coming across from the North Sea into the Atlantic. Hey, David McGuffin, hope you've enjoyed this look around the north coast of Ireland, County Antrim, with the Carrick-a-Reid rope bridge in the background. Your adventure starts right here with David McGuffin's Exploring Europe.
So that's a little wrap of and a little look of everything up there on the north coast of Ireland, both in the Republic and in Northern Ireland as well. I gave you a little overview, a little bit about the troubles between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, or the Protestants and Catholics, or the Unionists and the Republicans, whatever the words you want to call it, the Unionist and the Loyalist, whatever. But you'll have to go on one of my Ireland tours, Best of Ireland tours, to get the full deal, because it requires visiting several cities like Derry or Londonderry, Bushmills, and Belfast, to get a concept on what the troubles and why everyone's pounding their heads against each other for these centuries on end. Hey, listen, thank you guys for watching tonight. We're taking the next few weeks off. After next Friday, a week from Friday, we'll be heading out, flying over to Frankfurt, Germany, to begin our Christmas markets tours that visit France and visit Germany. We'll dip into Austria just a tad, and also Italy and the Dolomites in Bolzano. And we'll finish up in Munich. We'll do that. And then Charlotte and I and another couple, Johnny and Eva, are going to do a exploration trip down into the hinterlands of Croatia, kind of scouting out some places to add to our Budapest and Croatia land and sea tour that we've got advertised for next year. So I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving next week, and hope you'll join us either in person or online on the 19th of December for our grand finale for 2023, our Christmas Travel Talk Tuesday special. Thank you guys. We'll see you in a few weeks. Happy Thanksgiving.